One Piece episode 948 aired today, and if you haven't watched that episode, I suggest you go watch it and then come back because we'll be discussing about it and we'll be going through the good, the bad, and the ugly. So let's review One Piece episode 948. Now this episode begins off with of course where we left off, and Raizo is sneaking in and trying to get Kawamatsu's cuffs, the keys to his cuffs and his sword. Kawamatsu's in the process of being attacked, and he's holding off his own. Now, overall, this episode is, I gotta say from the beginning that this episode, I have very mixed feelings about this episode. There are some good parts, there are some not so good parts, and the pacing. Let's start with the pacing. This episode has some horrible pacing, in my opinion. They barely got anything done in this episode. Of course, for people who love flashy fights, anime fights, and stuff, this episode will be a treat because the animation was awesome. They spent a lot of money on animation, clearly. Kawamatsu's attacks, all the animation effects, all the battle effects, all of that was really good. Raizo's attacks were pretty clean. Okiku's attacks were pretty clean. So, animation wise, for people who love battles, yes, this is a very fantastic episode. They spent a lot of time on that. But for story, for progression, for pacing, this episode was horrible. They barely got through at least even half. They didn't even get through half a chapter, and most of it was just fights, which was not even in the manga, which I do appreciate to an extent. For example, we did see a lot of these Beast Pirate headliners do something, because in the manga they barely did anything. They were just there. People like Solitaire, the monkey devil fruit lady, she's the assistant warden, I believe, of the Beast Pirates. She didn't do anything in the manga. She was just there. She just existed. So the anime took it to a next step. They gave her some moves. They gave her some screen time, attacks. So that was really interesting. Raizo versus Solitaire was pretty nice. We did see some other Beast Pirates do some things, which is good. But overall, it was most of this was just filler. This entire episode was basically just filler, and the only canon material was very, very few. And even the canon material, I do have some problem with how they executed it, which we will get to it pretty soon. But speaking of fights, I really did love the animation effects for Kawamatsu. They clearly spent a lot of time for this. But what bothers me is that they spent a lot of budget on this, but yet the animation for Big Mom and Queen was horrible. They seriously spent a lot of effort on this one, but for that one, which was the highlight moment of Wano, Big Mom versus Queen was really a hype moment that everyone was looking forward to. That one they failed miserably. It was very, very choppy. The animation effects were so pathetic. But this one they spent a lot of time. So I don't know what they're planning. But either way, it is what it is, and it was enjoyable for this episode. Now moving on to the next topic. Another problem I have with this episode was the lack of seriousness. In the manga, if you're a manga reader, when you read this episode when you read this chapter actually, you feel the seriousness. For the first time, everything is not going to Luffy's way. Like, Luffy's used to going to a place and everyone supporting him and everything just happens. But this time it was special, it was different, it was more realistic. Even though he's offering these people power and he's willing to fight for them, their spirits are broken. The prisoners, their spirits are broken. They've been through this for 20 years. They've rebelled and they've been broken down. So obviously they're not going to just listen to some new strange guy who's offering them freedom, and they're not going to turn to his side immediately. So the manga did a really good job. Oda did a fantastic job of showing that no, it's not easy to win the hearts and souls of people. It's not easy to win their trust. You have to show them more. So they were actually holding Luffy him back. They were actually rebelling on Luffy. They want him to butt out and leave them alone, because whatever he does, they face the consequences. So it was nice to see that part done well. But the part that got to me was that seriousness. The seriousness of that scene was immediately diluted. Like, when all of the Akazaya samurai who are present there, they reveal themselves and they all gather up together and they have this epic moment. There's this one dude from the prisoners, the blue-haired guy, who's like fanboying over each of these characters, and he completely loses it. Like, he doesn't look like someone who's has a broken spirit. He looks like a fanboy. He just goes gaga over them, and it quickly turns into a comedic moment. That kind of took a lot away from the seriousness of the situation that they are in. Like, right now, they're stuck between the Beast Pirates who are trying to kill them using virus bullets, and they have to make a decision between either, subduing or supporting Luffy. So it's a very serious moment that they're in, and this dude just makes it look like it's a complete comedic moment. As usual, One Piece is a kind of a comedic series, but this was not it. That felt so off. The music choices in that moment was really weird, and that was completely off-putting for me. And well, moving on from that, we can I can stay and rant on all day, but we gotta move on. Another important thing for anime only watchers is that we finally get the reveal of Okiku. We get Okiku's epithet, which is very important. Okiku's epithet is Kikunojo of the falling snow, or the lingering snow according to the manga. So you have to keep in mind that these epithets are not just for show. Kinemon, for example, is Kinemon of the Foxfire, and then Raizo is Raizo of the Mist. Based on these epithets, we know that they are not given to them lightly. Raizo is able to use shadow clones. He's able to go poof in a mist. He's able to use these jutsus. Kinemon is able to use fire. So you should be able to expect that Okiku should be able to do something related to snow. The same way Kanjuro. Kanjuro is evening shower Kanjuro. Kanjuro of the evening shower, evening rain, whatever you want to call it. So each of these epithets are really good, and we have to pay more attention to that. Next, moving on, is that Kiku, of course, he's a man, and I don't know how people are going to react. It's going to be fun to see all the YouTube reactors react to that. Probably most people won't even care because, you know, most people actually did suspect it for a long time, but for people who didn't suspect it, kudos, it's gonna be surprising. Anyway, Okiku is a really interesting character. I love Okiku, and I'm really glad they brought some diversity into the character, so it's really nice to see that. Moving on from that, of course, we see these Akazaya 9 fight. They all have some cool moments, and the most important thing is that we see Old Man Hyo actually fight. He actually puts up a lot of fight. He has a lot left in him, so he's not completely done it yet. So that's pretty much all that the episode was. I mean, there was barely anything in this episode. I mean, this was the first time I know that One Piece manga and anime are completely different, and they follow different pacing. But this was the first time in a long while that I felt this pacing was absolutely horrible. Like, I barely even watched through the episode, and already it was over. And in the end of the episode, of course, Killer and Kid is asking Killer to free him. Of course, they're gonna get free, sure, whatever. But progression wise, nothing. It was just a battle based episode. It was all about, the moment. And even for me, the moment was actually ruined because of that one prisoner dude making a joke or turning it into a comedic moment. Anyway, it was a really weird episode. Quality wise, it was really top notch. You can never question the animation quality. A lot of budget was spent on it. It was really top tier animation quality. The art was really good. But for pacing, it was horrible. Absolutely disgustingly horrible pacing. And they basically didn't achieve anything in this episode. Other than that, the Big Mom scene was pretty fine. Again, proportions. Queen and Big Mom, they basically look same right now. Big Mom is supposed to be much bigger than Queen. The proportions are completely off. It's so weird. And of course, Big Mom defying all the logic. She comes back. She's again awake, even with 100 tranquilizers on her. Anyway, all of that was really good. That was actually a filler, by the way. None of that is in the manga. Majority of this episode is filler. Basically 90% of this episode is completely filler, so keep that in mind. It was a really decent episode for me. I barely would give it like 3, not even 3, 2.5 out of 5 if I were to rate this episode. And I really want to see how this episode is going to move on. At this pace, we will never get to Oden by the end of the year. That's my biggest problem. I want to get to Oden by the end of the year, but this is not it. It's going to take forever. Anyway, we'll see you in the next episode, and thank you for watching. Like, subscribe, and all that, and I'll see you in the next one. Thank you. Bye.